For having to do it out here. The original intent was in the gym. We got a call this weekend that because they put the voting machines in the gym, nobody can go in except the Russians. So it's top secret over there. So, out here in Spokane, we're a pretty hardy lot, so hopefully you guys will hang with us. We'll try to make this as informative and short as possible. My name's Gary Ulickney. I'm part of the steering committee for what we call the Stop the Snow Camp Mine. A bunch of us kind of...
We're not professionals either, just so you know.
It's a good song. That kind of have got together. Everybody needs a head, and we can't, when we go meet with folks, we can't take all of us in. We wish we could, but so it has to be a small group, and these guys volunteered to help to pick this up. I'd like to introduce them. We have Laura Johnson, okay, Jane Lee Hicks, Donna Poe, BJ Privet, Bill Poe, and Jill Kettering. And all of us we're meeting weekly, kind of. Hey, we don't want this thing any more than you guys do, so hopefully we can do that. You'll hear from these folks coming up. First, we have a special guest tonight. I believe we have one at least. Dr. Dennis Riddell, who is our state rep. I used to play football, and I think you guys that play football, Riddell helmets were always the thing. So, Dennis Riddell, who's got a couple comments. Dennis is very supportive of this effort, and we want to give him a little time to comment.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know about you, but I do not dig the quarry. This is a bad idea for Alamance County, especially with this part of Alamance County, beautiful snow camp where we've all chosen to live. This is the last thing we need here. I want to share with you some basic information. What I've got here, I think Gary said they're going to go over with you later, right out of the state statute. And it details the 7 means, the 7 ways the state can deny a permit. We are well past the county part of this. The county got it permitted. How many of you have heard about this in the last 3 weeks? Look around. There's a problem with our process in Alamance County. I believe our commissioners will address that. We have to deal with the reality of where we are, and that is it has been permitted by the county. The next stop is the state. I'm sorry.
We can't hear your mouth.
It could be a blessing, you never know. So it has passed the county permitting process. That gives the quarry owners a vested right. And the state's responsibility is to make sure that nothing was omitted in making sure it comes under these 7 steps, 7 ways that they can be denied a permit. Now, in conversation with the Department of Environmental Quality and the mining branch, the mining division, we were told that the job of DEQ is to try to help them get permits. So what we're going to have to do is marshal every single expert, every possible complaint that has merit. We can't go down to Raleigh, or when they have the public meeting, we can't just go and say, I don't want it. We have to prove a threat to air quality, water quality, groundwater sources, wildlife, perhaps historic properties, anything. So all of you know people who know people. And if there's any expertise out there in your world that can be helpful in those areas, I would ask you, please bring it to the attention of Gary and these folks. And I'll tell you what, this is a good group of people. These are folks that weren't going to sit back and watch this happen. These are people that decided we're going to do what they can to try to protect our property, try to protect our quality of life, try to protect our environment here in Southern Element. So thank you everybody for being here. This is a great turnout. I'm with you on this. I'll do whatever I can as in the office of state representative to keep you informed, to tell you what your rights are and what the next step might be. If you have any information you would like to get to me, I want to point out my wife Polly is there on the end. Polly, raise your hand. Okay. That lovely lady is also my legislative assistant. I get one whole staff member down in Raleigh. She is the person who answers the emails generally, the person who answers the phone. my wife Holly, so you can speak to her as if you were speaking to me. So thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate the time here. Thank you everybody for being here. This is not over. This is not beginning. This is, we're well into it now, and we need to stop it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Bob Bird is here. Bob, did you want to say anything? Aubrey? Okay. Bob has been very, very supportive of our efforts, and I think he truly understands some of the weaknesses in the current ordinance. He's been very supportive of us at the Commissioner's office. So, Bob?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
There, sir.
I am definitely really kind of awestruck awestruck's not the right word, disappointed in the way we have this ordinance and the way the process allowed the stone quarry to move forward, at least through the county part. And I'd like to see that change so it doesn't happen again. You know, it's really a question of land use policy, and maybe we need to be talking about countywide zoning in the future. I'm curious, how many would like to see countywide zoning? So that's a really good show of hands. Conventional wisdom was that was something you never talked about as a county commissioner if you ever wanted to get reelected again. But I'm willing to talk about it. I think we need to start really seriously talking about it and get our the county's planning board involved in holding some discussions and some hearings and getting the public involved in that. I'm sorry I was late, but I'm not sure what Representative Riddell just went over, but my understanding is that we're trying to have the state come and have a public hearing where you can all meet and voice your opinions. I don't think that's been scheduled yet. I know that Sylvan Elementary School has made itself available for such a hearing. I'm very sensitive to our environment and all the bad things that the stone quarry create for our environment. So I hope you feel like I'm on your side, because I am. Thank you.
We invited other county commissioners. Anybody else here? I didn't think so. No one else RSVP. Thanks again, Bob. Appreciate it. The purpose of tonight's meeting is we want to try to accomplish a couple things. We want to educate you, inform you, and get a call to action. Because this steering committee can't do this alone. The reason why the county commissioners had a special meeting is because you guys rallied and emailed them and said, we really want this thing done, and they listened to you, and that's what it's going to take as we move forward. It's also going to take a very focused effort. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what the project is. There's still some confusion, and we want to make sure everybody's on the same page when they're talking. What we're looking at is a 320-acre site, and I've been corrected. We were calling it a gravel pit mine. Under the state statutes, it's actually called a crushed stone quarry, and which doesn't sound worse than a gravel pit, but it is in the sense that in the quarry they actually will do blasting. In a gravel pit mine, they won't do blasting. So when you talk about this, call it a crushed stone quarry, and that's the language that the state uses, and so we're speaking the same language that they are. On this 320-acre site, about 82 acres will be disturbed. That means they'll be digging 82 acres of the ground. According to their permit, their maximum depth is going to be 325 feet. It's going to be pretty deep. There's a big hole in the ground. And here's the scary part, is they'll be pumping out to wash the stone 500,000 gallons of water a day. A day. So, I mean, this is this is something we really need to hammer home, and Jane's going to talk a little bit about the water quality issues and the water depletion issues in just a minute. But they will be pumping out 500,000 gallons a day. As I mentioned, Jane will go over some of the disadvantages of this and some of the problems with this. Where is it? Just to be clear, it's a site found directly behind the Snow Camp Baptist Church, off Snow Camp, Clark Road, the other boundary, Reedy Creek to the east, and Quakenbush Road to the north. That's the site. That's where the location is going to be. There are a couple creeks that run through there, and we're hoping that that will help us as well. Who bought the land? This is the part that frustrates the most of us, because this group has come in here and purchased this land and filed for these permits in huge secrecy. We have no idea who this company is. And it turns out the people who bought the land was a company called Snow Camp Investments. They register in Wyoming. And the reason they register in Wyoming is you can remain anonymous. You do not have to say who owns the company, who runs the company. So there's a great deal of concern on our part as to who these people are and exactly what it is they're trying to do. So, and we cannot find that out. We have tried to search. We have one individual who signed the permit for the county, or for the state, a gentleman named Chad Freed. Some of you who may have got letters from them may know his name. If you Google him, he works for, at the time the permit was being submitted, he worked for a company called Boggs Paving out of Charlotte. Boggs Paving was recently indicted for bid rigging, $82 million bid rigging site down in there, and were punished accordingly, but we can't get any farther than that. So they bought the property, then they created which again, to echo the comments of the commissioner, is this was done with no input from us, no oversight by the county planning board, which was created to represent the unincorporated parts of the county, supposedly our advocate, and without the knowledge of the county commissioners. I mean, they got caught with their pants down on this as well, and it was really kind of, I don't know if it was embarrassing, but there's something clearly wrong with this ordinance, and if anything comes out of it, we definitely need to fix that, because I would envision if these guys put a stone quarry, the next thing's going to be an asphalt. So, because those go hand in hand. They created the permit was approved January 28th of 2018. On February 2nd, they created a company called Alamance Aggregates, again registered in Wyoming, who basically they list their address as that old burnt down building out there on Clark Road. That's the address they list. So I don't even know if they can get mail there. And they submitted the state permit, so a different company, and we're looking into this, and we're not quite done with the county yet. There's a couple things that we may be able to address with that, and BJ may talk a little bit more about that. So we don't know, what do we know about them? Not much. We know this connection to Boggs Paving. What we do know is, again, they came in with a very, almost like stealth mode. None of us even knew this happened. The way I found out was I went up to the Rego, and there was a sign on there that said, hey, do you all know a stone quarry's coming? And that was like 2.5 weeks ago. So they have really done a job of coming in here with what I call a veil of secrecy, and they provide some misleading information. Those of you that, the state only requires a letter of notification to go to any property within 1,000 feet. In that letter they sent out, they said, they basically said in the letter, which I think is very misleading, that this project will have absolutely no effect on your property. You're going to blow stuff up next to there, pull out, be hauling gravel all day, trucks are going to be coming in and out, your property values are going to be affected. There are a lot of studies that show that, and I can't believe that they put that in the letter. But they chose Alamance for a reason. That the ordinance is very, very weak in terms of it's very pro-business and not very consumer-friendly, and so we think they came in there for a reason. The next steps is the state permit. We're focusing on that. BJ's going to talk a little more about that. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Jane, who's going to talk about what are some of the negative consequences of having a stone quarry in your backyard.
Real quick, before you do that.
Yeah.
What was that about the requirement to send letters to adjoining landowners? Which permit requirement?
The state. The county had no requirement to notify anybody. The county has no requirement for input or public hearing or public notification.
Do you have copies of those letters?
I'm sorry?
Do you have copies of letters?
We
to
do.
the landowners?
The state also has copies of not only the letter.
You're on the microphone?
Yeah.
I'll get to it. I'll get to it in my
Yeah,
section.
BJ's going to talk more about that. And we're gonna stay here as long as you want to answer questions. So if you guys will stay here, we'll answer any question you have if we can. So what we want to try to do is get through this because we know we're outside, but we will stay here as long as you want.
Thank you, Gary. Hi, my name is Jane Lee Hicks, and I've lived in Snow Camp now for 2 years. I'm delighted to be here. I don't think there's a better place in North Carolina to live than right here. And up until 2 weeks ago, I knew nothing about crushed stone mining until I saw a notice a neighbor shared with me, a notice that he had received about a planned aggregate mine. I don't even know if I've ever even used that word before. So I started doing some research, and I became very afraid of what might become of our community. So for the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you some of what I've learned about aggregate mining and the concerns that I have for the quality of our environment and our health in this community. So to start with some boring parts, crushed stone. It belongs to a group of raw materials that are called aggregate. It also includes gravel and sand. In this case, we're talking about crushed stone. It's used primarily in road construction and in a variety of building materials as a base material for concrete, like what you're sitting on right now, very comfortably, I'm sure. So natural aggregates of crushed stone, sand, and gravel and supporting industries contribute an annual total of $38 billion to the U.S. economy. And in 2017, North Carolina was the 8th largest crushed stone producing state in the United States. So you can see it's an important industry for the state. You can see why they want to put through these types of operations to increase their activity in this industry. So now let's switch to how is the stone mined? So crushed stone mining operations involve first removal of groundwater so they can access the rock formation. It's called dewatering. And as Gary said, they're planning to pump, according to their permit application, 500,000 gallons of water out of the groundwater aquifer every day in an attempt to get down 320 some odd feet to the rock formations. So if you can just envision that for a few minutes. Precisely. I could hear that. 150-foot well or 350 foot. So they need to, once they get to the rock formations, they can excavate these with heavy equipment, blasting with dynamite that releases the rock from the working face. The blasted rock is then transported by truck or conveyor to a crusher, where it goes through a series of crushing and screening stages to produce a range of final sizes that suit a particular customer's needs. And ultimately, the crushed stone is loaded onto heavy dump trucks for transportation to a construction site. Most all the aggregate produced in North Carolina is used in North Carolina, usually within about 50 miles of where it's produced. It's one of the reasons why they like this location. We're very close to the interstate. The most expensive part in mining crushed stone is actually the transportation. But with this type of operation, there are environmental and health consequences that come with this. There's a significant environmental and quality of life consequences, the most important of which are, as we said, air quality, water quality, and noise pollution. And again, in their mining permit, Alamance Aggregates plans to extract 500,000 gallons of water per day from the underground aquifer. And this is needed to lower the ground level so they can get at more rock. So studies have shown, there's been no study on this particular property, but there have been a number of published studies on this type of mining. They have shown that this type of mining can cause significant decline in groundwater levels. The quarries act as a huge well, pumping out hundreds of thousands of gallons of water and lowering the water table in the aquifer, which can affect neighboring wells that share that aquifer. But it can also impact those who don't directly share that aquifer. That dewatering can create a reversed hydraulic gradient between two aquifers with a connection. So that as this one aquifer is depleted, a neighboring aquifer will tend to reverse flow back in to fill that aquifer, depleting water supplies, not just in that the immediate region of the mining aquifer, but in the surrounding areas, the surrounding aquifers. It's a very dynamic process. So how many here were here during the drought of 2007? Recall that. And a lot of the concerns that occurred, we were in an extreme drought region in North Carolina, and a lot of us were having to think about digging our wells deeper to get to more water. So you can envision the impact of all this additional water coming out of the aquifer, depleting the groundwater as we typically will, and ultimately will cyclically move into another drought situation. So as we talk about the water, it's not just a matter of taking it out of the ground. Then it's what do you do with it once it's out of the ground? They've contaminated the water just to get it out. They've blasted it. When you blast the water, you can add turbidity and sediment to the water. You can increase the temperature. And then they're going to try and store this water to some degree, but ultimately it's going to be released. It's going to be released into the streams. So anyone downstream, anyone that has a stream nearby is going to be potentially impacted by the contaminants that are coming out of this mine. And the streams that we're looking at, there's some unnamed creeks on the property, and another one, Reedy Creek, that feed into the Cane Creek, that feed into the Haw River, that feeds into Jordan Lake, and on into the Cape Fear River watershed. So the impact, we're concerned as local residents of Snow Camp, but it is a much further reaching impact when you look at the downstream effects. These kinds of studies have got to be done and mitigation plans put in place if they even think of putting a mine in this area. So, in addition to water, there's the air quality issue. So if you live within a mile or two of where their plant is going to be, you can expect to be impacted by fine particulate matter created by blasting, digging, transportation, and processing of the stone, as well as dust that settles on your home and your property. A lot of these homes that are near some of these mines and other areas constantly have a film of dust that cover their house. And just picture what that does to your HVAC system and everything else. In addition, heavy machinery and trucks burn diesel fuel, emitting large amounts of toxic air pollutants, and create additional dust from the dirt roads traveling up and down. Many of the air contaminants can create higher than normal ozone layers, which is a powerful respiratory irritant, which can cause shortness of breath, chest pains, wheezing, and coughing, all according to the American Lung Association. So people at risk are obviously children. Children who have asthma, they can see an increased incidence in asthma and asthma attacks in the regions around these types of mines. And elderly, us elderly that are over 60 and are concerned about our respiratory health. It may reach a point where we are wearing surgical masks just to be outside, just to make sure that we're not breathing in some of these contaminants. And Jill had pointed out something to me about one of the types of contaminants. It's the fine particulate that are small enough to be inhaled. It's a type of a silicate particle, and these are known carcinogens. So, I hate to see our community come to that point where we want to feel like we have to wear a mask, surgical mask, just to stay healthy outside. Okay, I'm going to talk just a bit about the noise. I mean, we're talking about explosives, blasting, similar to a war zone. This is the type of noise that is emitted from these mines. I live about a mile from that site, and right now there's cows grazing on that beautiful, serene pasture out there. I can hear those cows mooing at night. The air is so clear and so quiet here. I can hear those cows mooing. That is going to be replaced by the sounds of trucks and blasting, and these operations, they've yet to indicate what their hours of operation are, but in many mines, they are run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's no relief from it. Oh, and the average lifespan of one of these types of signs is about 30 years. You can see how long you've got to try to endure something like that. Another thing I wanted to point out about the water is that a good bit of that property, we talked about the issue of depleting the water table and how that impacts our wells and how that could be extremely detrimental with a drought. But in the case of the other side of that, the opposite, what we've just had with the hurricanes and the flooding issues, a good part of that property is in floodplain. So all of the contaminants and carcinogens that are being pumped out of this mine, put in the water, is going to be stored until they can't keep it anymore, and then it's going to be flowing downstream. If you're anywhere near a stream, if you had any water that was on your property or you dealt with during the last couple of hurricanes, you're going to be dealing with this type of water from now on. This mine is allowed to come in. And one more point. Who in here has on their property or near their property the Colonial hazardous liquid pipeline that runs through there? A number of us do, as well as the high transmission electrical power lines from Duke Power. The easements for these two utilities run right through this property. And we're talking about blasting and excavating right next to a highly volatile chemical or pipeline, which was built in the 60s and was not built with the intention of it being situated next to a mine. If you research the issue of mines, quarry mines and pipelines, the two don't mix. That's what the typical theme is. Generally what you see are pipelines who are trying to locate near a quarry and what extremes they have to go through to go near a quarry, and they have to come in and trench out around where the pipeline is going, because rock is very rigid and it transmits the vibrations directly to the pipe. It doesn't absorb anything. So they have to trench out a good distance, put sand, concrete, double reinforced steel on those pipelines in order to even come near a mining operation to lay a new pipeline. In this case, the pipelines are already there. So what I'd like to ask, and we'll ask, what everybody can do at the end of this, if any of these are concerns of yours, if you're concerned about what risk you are going to be along that pipeline, call that number on your that you get from Colonial. It says call us and talk to us. They're aware of this now. They were not informed by the aggregate companies. They were not mentioned in the application permit. So call the number and let them know your concern. There's a lot of strength in the numbers, in the sheer numbers. So, no, they have not.
They told the county that they're looking into it.
Right. And also, we'll put you in after with questions, okay? We'll put you in if you have that question. We have some other things. Thank you, Jane.
So that's pretty much of mine, so.
Hey, Jane.
Jane, can I ask a question? One question? Yeah, is anybody here from the fire department?
Couple right in front of you.
Oh, yeah, there you are. We got great firefighters, but they're not trained to handle mines.
Absolutely.
They're not trained to handle dynamite. They're not trained to go in and do rescues, which that could happen. Not those type of rescues. Have they considered that?
I would call them and I would definitely.
And they're volunteers. They don't get paid.
I was the one who stopped and let the fire chief know that this was coming. He had no idea.
No, he didn't. I know because I do the books for the fire
Right.
department, and I know.
Well,
he
and even
did.
beyond that, I mean,
And he lives right there.
He
close
does
to
live
it, too.
right there. They were never informed. They were never consulted.
Okay.
And if one of these, God forbid, if one of these things were to blow, there's what's called an impact zone, blast impact zone. That can spread out to several thousand feet, where the fireball actually goes out, several thousand feet from the thing depending upon the wind. So it is a dangerous situation, and it would be very difficult for our county to respond to that. I'm trying to get a hold of the person, there's a woman who is the head of emergency services for the county too, and see what their position is on that.
But that's something that the state needs to be.
Absolutely, that's why we would love to have, I intend to call the fire chief and have him at the public hearing talking about that.
Good.
I think that's a very important point. All right, let's move on. BJ's going to talk a little bit about where we're at now with the state permit process and everything.
I think
We
you
will
have one more
definitely-
question.
We'll definitely take more questions
We
at the end.
circulate any petitions or anything, or anything?
Um,
like that?
Yeah, but we're gonna have a lot more success with the state through the public hearing process we'll get more into. Also from contacting your representatives, we've looked into actually circulating petitions, but have been told they really don't do a whole lot of good in this particular situation. So my name is BJ Privet. I've only been in Snow Camp for a year, but I've lived in Chatham, in County, and in Saxbahaw for about 12 years. I intentionally located my family here about 50 minutes from where I work because I want to raise my family here. I have a lot of friends here. I love the community. And I would love for that mine not to be in all of our backyards. Kind of going back to the pipeline issue, if you're wondering whether or not you're affected by the pipeline or not, if your kids go to school here or if you work near the school, the pipeline is just on the other side of those trees in the outfield. So it runs the length of Alamance County. It splits into three, a couple miles down that way. And so it may affect more people than you think. Anyway, what I want to do very briefly is give you some of the story of what's already happened. Where are we in the process? Unfortunately, we're already past the county permitting stage. The permitting office has already reviewed and approved the application pending state approval. However, Gary and a number of other of us were able to go to a county commissioners meeting not that long ago, a month ago. Was it not even that long ago? Yeah. October 24th, okay. Well, no, the one before that. It was October 15th. We were able to get on the agenda. Gary spoke very passionately. You can see it on the county commissioner's website. About all of these issues and concerns. He had just found out about it, and a lot of us met Gary there. The commissioners were, many of them were rightly caught off guard and incensed about the issue. That led to a special called meeting from the county where they just addressed this issue, and it was really just to petition the state to hold a public hearing as a part of their permitting process. And that's really where we're at with the county. Is they voted, I can't remember if it was unanimously, unanimously to ask the state to hold that hearing. And then the state, even though there's not been an official announcement yet, the state has agreed to hold a hearing in Alamance County, and we're hoping it will be here. We still don't know a whole lot about the permit application for the county, and so we're going to be able to get a look at the permit application next week. Even though the county's already reviewed it, we think it's going to be a good idea for us to lay eyes on it and actually make sure the county followed their own ordinance, which is minimal, and make sure we do due diligence in making sure that was lawfully permitted. We also have a number of questions, and there may be more that we'll submit to the county attorney related to the permit application and the permitting process just to make sure this was all legally done. With the state, we're very early in the process. The application wasn't submitted that long ago for the state permit. The permit application has been dispersed to various state agencies. And some of those agencies have actually already submitted their comments. And so all of these agencies, the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, Water Quality, Parks and Rec, or State Recreation, They've all had a chance to weigh in, and we're still awaiting some of the comments, but we've been able to look at the entire permit, and we're still going through it. But just to give you, sort of some insight into what the state is talking about and what their concerns are, they've already indicated that they're requiring the company to apply for a number of other permits, some of them federal permits related to discharge of wastewater into waterways. There's interest in how the company will ensure that withdrawing 500,000 gallons of water a day isn't going to drain the aquifer and end up impacting the wells in the surrounding community. So right now, that's where we are with the state, and we'll get in a little bit into the public hearing in a minute. In the meantime, we've also forwarded the permit application to the Southern Environmental Law Center, which has an office in Chapel Hill, and we've had one meeting with them where they've agreed to hear our case. If they decide that this case, they have a chance of being successful, we may have them legally representing us and the community in this effort. Fingers crossed that that's going to happen, and we should know hopefully in the next week or two whether they're going to agree to take the case. The attorney we met with is already fighting another quarry, a very similar situation, a rural community, and has had some success already, so it does give us hope. Due to all of the letters from you all, raise your hand if you submitted a letter to the state. So all of your letters, and thanks to the county commissioners and the weight that their vote held with the state, we will be having a public hearing. We don't know when it is. It will have to be sometime within the permitting process time frame. So we're hoping to know more about the date and location for that. We've asked that it be held in Snow Camp at the elementary school to make it easy for everyone to attend. And during this hearing, the state is going to accept oral and written comments from the public. So this is going to be your time to either express in written or oral comments how this project is going to affect you and what your concerns are. However, this is a really emotional topic for all of us, or most of us. And so the state really doesn't want people to get up and tell them everything and every way that this is going to affect them. Really all the state cares about is how this affects them according to the mining laws. And so I do want to get into a little bit of that, of what the mining laws are and what can cause the denial of a state mining permit, so that you can focus your comments onto just those issues to which the state has to listen to us. So there are 7 reasons, and I think Representative Rydell mentioned that there were 7. 3 of them don't really relate to anything that. Okay.
We don't have enough for everybody,
Yeah.
but you can shoot.
3 of them I won't talk about. They relate to directly following the law of the permit or of the ordinance, and if they don't follow that, they don't have the application approved. One of them is related to parks, which there are none within the affected area. But the other 4 that do relate to us directly, that I want you all to start thinking about how it affects you are, does the project adversely affect groundwater supplies, wildlife, or surface water? So if you're worried about your well going dry, especially for those of you that have had to dig deeper wells after the last drought, that's something to think about. Does your property flood? Would extra water discharged into nearby streams increase the chances of flooding or the frequency of flooding? The second one relates to air, surface water, and groundwater quality. Do you worry about contamination of your wells, streams, or ponds? Do you have anyone in your household under 12 or over 60, or somebody else in your house that has breathing problems and could be susceptible to air pollution, to increased particulate matter in air? Anyone with asthma? Will this project pose a physical hazard to nearby buildings or roads? If you live within 1,000 feet of this mine, you may experience some negative effects. It just depends on how they do it and with what frequency. Think about if you're within eyeshot of the mining area, that may be something to bring up during this public hearing process. The fourth thing that could potentially stop the approval of this permit is any experience with similar operations, especially in this area. So we do have another quarry that operated for a long time in Snow Camp, the Soapstone Quarry over on Clark Road. If you live near that or knew anyone that did, and you know of any negative effects from that mining operation, that can carry weight with the state. If you can show that increased the amount of sediment in creeks, or that increased the amount of pollution in wells or air pollution, they have to take that into account. So we really ask that you start to take an inventory of how you think this will affect you, and focus it really onto that in preparation for this public hearing, so that we can come to it showing that we're informed, showing the state that we are going to hold regulators accountable for following the laws that are written and that are there to protect us. And your public comments, as much as possible, should really just be focused on those concerns. And Laura will talk a little bit more about the logistics of the public comments in the public hearing. While there are a lot of other issues associated with the mine, the state cannot consider things like concerns about property values. That would have been on the county if that was part of the county ordinance, and many counties do consider that. Alamance County is one of the few that doesn't as a part of their heavy industrial land use ordinance. Other things that we can't try to petition the state to consider are things like traffic, noise, with the exception of some of the vibrations that can happen from blasting. And again, I understand this is an emotional issue for most of us, but if you do choose to make a public oral comment, I would, just from what I've been told, I would recommend that it's brief and focused on only the things the state cares about. I know it's going to be hard not to get up and want to be a little bit angry that we're even having to have this conversation. And certainly if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us about how to structure your comments. We will try to have some sort of resource outlining this that we can send out to the community to make sure everyone knows what to think about. And with that, I want to have Laura come up and talk a little bit more about the public hearing, and then how you can stay involved and help this effort.
Hey everybody, I might tag team with Donna as well. So Donna and I are the faces of the Snow Camp email that so many of you are signed up for. If you're not, we ask that you do sign up for our email list. What we're trying to do with that is we're trying to share facts. It's really, really easy in a situation like this to hear something from another person, and you don't quite get the right information. That's also going to be the way that if we find out someplace that you can help, that we will let you guys know. Like BJ said, part of what we haven't told is that we get together every single Sunday for at least an hour, hour and a half, and we're looking through all the new information we've got, all the new issues that we're aware of, and we're brainstorming and trying to figure out what are the things that we need to do, and what are the people we need to talk to, and how can we stop this from 15 different angles. So that's what we're really doing, and as we come up with things where we need people with expertise, we'll send that out to the email list, asking if anybody can help us with that. In terms of the public hearing, like you've heard a few times, we don't know the details yet. We do know it's coming soon, and that we're guessing that we're not going to have a whole ton of notice. We're probably going to have a couple weeks at most. We're really, really pushing for that meeting to be here in Snow Camp, because we think it's important for it to be in our community and to get as many people as possible from this area to that meeting. Similar to the commissioners meeting, if you sign up to speak, you're going to have about 3 minutes, and that goes really fast. Some of our speakers here, we've probably been going on for 10 or 15 minutes. 3 goes by in a shot. One thing I do want to say, my dad always told me, and he was a hospital administrator, and he always told me, if you're arguing a point, I don't care how you feel, tell me the facts. He's like, don't start with I feel, I feel, I feel. He said, tell me the facts. And that's how you're going to get your argument across. So we're going to ask the people who want to sign up to speak, come prepared with your facts. If your well is within a certain location to the mine, come talk about that. If you were here in 2007 and it went dry and you had to drill it deeper, talk about that. If you live downstream and you just got flooded from all the hurricanes and the water that was coming through the streams, I know mine did. My driveway flooded in 2 spots and I couldn't get out for a while. Talk about that. So that's what we need people to talk about, are the facts. The fire department, we need you guys to get up and talk about the facts and say that we don't have the equipment for this. We don't have the staff for this. What is the state going to do to help us? That kind of thing. So written comments are going to be just as important as spoken comments during that public hearing. So if you're not able to speak, provide the written comments. If you are able to speak, still provide written comments to the state. We're not sure at this point if you're going to be able to email those in or if you're going to have to mail them in. All those details, we'll send it out by the listserv, we'll send it out Facebook, we'll send it out next door. So we'll let you guys know as soon as we know. And I think that's everything on my list. So I'm handing it over to Donna.
All right, I'm going to keep this short because I'm at the end and we want to give you guys some time to ask questions. Fortunately, for being at the end, you guys all said pretty much what I was going to say. So I'm just going to emphasize a few things. At the top of my list, though, is first and foremost, thank you, all of you. It's because of you that we're standing here today, being able to talk about a public hearing, that we have a county commissioner here with us, that we've made it as far as we have. So we're very thankful for you, and thank you for your patience with us. I don't know if it's really mentioned, but we are not professionals. This is not our jobs. But we have been at this pretty much 24/7, and we're just so passionate, as you all are as well. And we're thankful to be in a position that we can lead you and lead this coalition. So in saying that, we do need your help. How can you help? So many people have asked, how can I help? We've shared some of those opportunities here this evening. We plan on being very specific. The closer we get to the public hearing that you've been hearing so much about, the biggest thing is to sign up for that listserv. I know I've got a lot of Facebook friends. A lot of you are here from Facebook, Nextdoor, but the best way you can be informed and the way you'll know for sure that's factual and not miss it is to get on that listserv. There was some pretty ladies out front that as you were coming in, if you missed them coming in, please on your way out, see one of them, sign the clipboard with your email address, okay? We really need you on there. I think, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it might be helpful to be able to share how many people we have on the listserv at some point, for somebody of importance. I don't know. But, well, no, right now we're at 180, but I'm just saying the more we get, I'd love to say we got 500 people on this listserv, you know? So please get on there. It's either Laura or myself that's answering you. Be honest. You know, share your comments in there. That Laura had a good point. Fortunately, I mean, we'll listen to you. You can share what you want, but really be thinking about factual things that'll help our case, okay? The biggest thing that we're going to be sharing, like I said, on that listserv, hopefully very soon, is the date of that public hearing, because we want each and every one of you to be there present, but if you can't, we understand life gets in the way, and we're going to find out the details of how the written comments will be submitted, but I've heard that they're just as important as being in person, so everything will be listened to and considered. So some of the things that both Jane was talking about, BJ, and just some of the situations, we need to please share those. Think about flooding situations, drought situations. Another thing that hasn't been mentioned, and it is kind of my husband's new area of expertise. He's always loved history. Where is he? I don't know where he is. Oh, okay. If you, any old timers out here, that you know, Snow Camp's a huge historical district, and so that definitely comes into play with this. So if you know of some stories or some buildings nearby or whatever that might be affected by this, go ahead and email the No Snow Camp, and I'll direct it to my husband in the next room. So. But yeah, but everything matters, and we want to hear from you. Okay. So in closing, like I said, I can't impress enough how important you all are to this process. When we ask for help, please respond ASAP and stand up and be counted for. Okay. We're all in this together. We love Snow Camp. We love our surrounding communities. We love where we live. We love our environment. And we want to stay here. And we're going to do everything we possibly can. Don't lose hope. I've talked to so many people that think that they just felt like they had no choice in the matter, that it was a done deal. It is not. Okay? We are not going down without a fight. Have hope. Be courageous. Do not be terrified. Okay? It will be good. one of my catchphrases. Thank you.
All right. I can't emphasize this enough either, and we're hammered in this, is when this public hearing comes up, we can't have 200 people up there, you know, keeping these guys for 2.5 hours. We have to be really focused. So what we're going to need is a mix of some experts who can get up and talk about some of this scientific stuff, and then some people who can just tell their personal story and how they'll be affected. So we were going to need you. But if you don't get an opportunity to make a comment publicly, the written comments are just as important, and we need to bombard them. And we'll let you know exactly what those
are still needed, even if you make.
Absolutely, even if you make get up and make a verbal presentation. So, questions? Start here.
Been hearing a lot about the water. Do we have any idea? And I've been here about 12 years. Which way is the water flowing? Now, I understand they'll be pulling from the aquifer. So if I am upstream from them, that they'll be quite possibly lowering my water levels. I'm off Snow Camp Road on the other side of the market behind the Dollar General.
You know, there's lots of studies out there that show this. And
can we spread those? Do you have the ability to send out links to that so we can make our letters?
Yes,
to the legislators
we
very
are.
specific?
And actually, we're even going beyond that. We have the Hall River Keeper on our side. We're actually going to be doing some specific water testing in those areas. In both those creeks, there's an unmarked creek on the west side, and then there's a Riddy Creek on the right. Jill, that runs through her property. Danielle's, the unmarked creek runs through there. We are going to be actually doing some testing. Other things we'll get you is information about your wells. It'd be a great thing if you tested your well now, because if something does happen to it, then you know you need that baseline information that says, here's what it used to be, and now it's not that way. So, okay, John.
This permit, did the state or the county either will not require any kind of environmental assessment or risk assessment for any part of this?
So as part of the...
Can you guys repeat the
so
question?
The question was, did the state or county require any sort of environmental impact assessment or other safety assessment? And the short answer to that is yes. So as a part of the state permitting process, they were required to submit a report from an engineering firm giving some details about blasting. If there are any physicists in the audience, we really need one to be able to try to figure out what it's actually telling us. It gives them basically a safe distance for blasting through rock. Now for water quality, that's really the big issue with the state. And they were already required to send one study looking at the impact of withdrawing 500,000 gallons of water a day. Of course, it was an engineering firm that they hired. It wasn't a study contracted by the state. However, the state did have some questions about it, and so I expect there's going to be quite a bit of follow-up from those agencies. And we'll try to get you updates on that as it happens. With the surface water, they are having to get a federal permit for discharge all that water into the surface waters in the surrounding area, and there will have to be an environmental study as well.
He'd ask a follow-up question.
Okay.
Do we have those reports?
The question was, do we have those reports? So the reports that we have so far are just the ones that were submitted to the state. And we'll try to figure out a way to get everyone access to those the state permit application. It's a public piece of information, but you have to actually go to the mining office in Raleigh to get it. We have it, and we'll try to figure out a way to disseminate that information as quickly as possible.
It seems to me that we have to dissect those reports critically.
Oh, absolutely. But the good thing is that in the water resource, the Department of Water Resources is requiring them to get what's called a 401 and 404 certification. And those are federal programs. So they address both the Water Quality Act, the Federal Water Quality Act, as well as the Wetlands Act. And there are wetlands on that property as well. So we have that to our advantage. That has not happened yet. So we do that. Other questions? Bob? We do not have the Sierra Club at this time. We have contacted a few of the Land Conservancy folks, but that would be great. If you have a contact that we could certainly get them. That would be great. In the back, there was a question. Yes, ma'am?
The last time I talked to Tom Wood, who is the manager of Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah, Tom West.
Tom West, that's right, Tom West. He said that, I spoke to Tom West with Colonial Pipeline, had an extensive conversation.
Yes.
And he was stating that they would be all over this company coming in and making sure that they were following all the rules and regulations, but there was nothing that they could do to stop this.
If we could get, if people want to have conversations, we're trying to, if you could kind of step out so we're not interrupting. Yeah, go ahead.
So it's my understanding, speaking with this man, is that calling them up and talking to them really isn't going to solve any problems. They just learned about it also, right before I spoke to them.
Well, we've been in contact with Tom way back. Now we're dealing with Chad Little out of Atlanta, who is their regional person. I had a discussion with Chad today. So what they are doing, what Colonial is doing, is putting together an analysis of what the blasting will be, what effect it might have on their pipeline. They have already notified the state that they were never notified that this thing was coming through. So they are working, they have to work through their areas, and we don't know what the outcome of that is quite yet. So, but it seems to me that if you have to have a 2,000-foot buffer from the center of the thing for any houses, the pipeline and the electric transmission line are both within that 2,000-foot buffer. And I'm not a genius, but my dad taught me that you don't blow stuff up around gas. So, we'll see how that. But we're in constant contact with them. The way Duke Energy has to work is they're a federal organization, and their issue is with the company. So what they're willing to do is provide a letter that says, if this company does any damage to their property, I mean, it's huge fines, and it's a federal issue. So, they have to work with the guidelines that they have. And it may be that their analysis turns out to say that they can't do this, but boy, it sure sounds risky to me. Any other questions? Yes.
Have you done any research about what type of?
Have we done any research about what type of contaminants might be leaked into our water from?
Yeah, I think Jane referred to those. I mean, when you crush rock, it produces dust. One of the big one is called silica, and it has in it crystalline silica, which is a known carcinogen. Now, we don't know that this mine's going to do that. We know from studies in past mines that these are the kinds of particles that are released.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've done it, the study that we need. Yes.
Excuse me, I had a couple questions. One was at the county level, with this being passed through the planning department. I understand that board commissioners approval of public hearing is not required, but it just seems like the due diligence wasn't done by the planning department. And so, is there any recourse for repeal there?
We're looking at that because there's a couple things that we think that may not have been done in terms of there are two floodplains on this. In the county land development plan done in 2011, I believe it was, Bob, was that before you got there? Yeah, has a requirement that there needs to be a floodplain permit in that case. So we filed a federal Freedom of Information Act for the records. We're going in this week to examine the whole file that the county did. But you have to understand that this ordinance was put in years ago, and it was very business oriented. It's when the economic development, and I believe, Jane, you told me that these mines typically, how many people do you think they hire? How many jobs do you think they hire?
20.
About 20. Yeah. 20 jobs for this kind of, and there was never an analysis of, I mean, if you look at the tax base, what we know is that there's a great study that BJ provided that shows that your property value, if you live a mile or so with this, could go down as much as 20% out to 2 miles, which is 10 to 15%. Well, I guarantee if this is passed, I'm going to be the first one at the tax assessor saying, I'm not paying the old tax. And so it could actually end up economically hurting the county rather than helping, because I don't know that this organization is going to be able to make up that lost tax revenue. So It really is. And one of the things we certainly need to do after this is work closely with the county to fix that ordinance because it's absolutely terrible. Yes, another question back there?
Well, since Florence came through, the 100-year flood plan's been blown out of the water, so they need to go ahead and reassess another 100-year flood plan due to Florence. It's torn up North Carolina.
Well, one of the
So
good
you're gonna have
things
to-
is, if you remember during the Florence hurricane, the coal ash spill down in eastern North Carolina, you know, the way they control those is the same way they do here. They put a large earth berm around there. Well, it wasn't enough to hold that, and I agree that if we have rains again or like we had recently, I don't know how they're going to keep this stuff contained in that piece of property. Yes, ma'am.
Can we have information on similar mines and the impact that they have had on their environment
We have studies that have been published, but Jane, I don't think we have.
The other big mines, things like soda, the ones that they take the time to really
Get into researching some of these parameters and making some of these measurements. But one of the Minnesota study, which we can share with you, is the impact of stone rock, fresh rock quarry mines. They wrote that specifically because they said most municipalities and governments do not have the resources to conduct these types of studies. So they published this particular study so that it might be used for different municipalities to be as sort of a guideline as to what to look for.
And if you guys come across something, please share it with us, because we're looking for every piece of information we get. In response to John's question, we don't know of any studies that have specifically been done on this piece of property. Even if you look at, and what was so interesting about the blasting report, in the blasting report that was submitted to the state, not one mention of the pipeline. Didn't mention the pipeline at all. Yes, ma'am.
If I'm not mistaken, and if somebody knows better than me, please comment on this. On Clark Road, there are some radio. I hadn't thought about cell phone towers, but they're broadcasting
Ham radios.
over there. It's more than that. It's radio stations you dial on your radio, but there's also TV stations, and even up on the mountain, there's those transmitters. And I know dynamite has an effect on those.
Yeah, but you have to remember now, there's a range, something that's going to be, what they look at is even like 1,000 feet away. But what we did contact, and I don't know if anybody, we need the folks, I contacted, some of you know that.
The county needs to be able, if people from the northern part of the county have to drive down to the southern part, they're less likely to. But if we have it in central,
Well, the problem is, we want to find a location that's big enough too. I mean, the people at the state suggested the county commissioner's room, which only seats about 50 people, and we don't want that either.
No, but
So
we got
continue to
museums,
explore that.
hospitals, and things like that. We got hospitals that we can use.
In the back there.
One thing I suggest everybody that lives close to the vicinity of where this mine's gonna be going through is to take pictures of their foundations on their homes before this starts.
And the walls. Walls, everything.
Ponds and other things, so we can document if something does happen.
Because, I mean, where do you get restitution? I don't know. You need to,
Let's just stop it from
if your
happening.
well goes dry, who's responsible? I don't know that that's been delineated.
What about agriculture? People that run for their animals?
We definitely, what we want at that public hearing is a mix of people who are focused on the water quality from a scientific standpoint, but we want people who, just like that, a mix of people who have health issues that can get up and say, the last thing I need in my life is a lot more dust. How will this affect my animals? Because we are a rural community. We have some wonderful farming out here.
In the school children, just being out here in recess.
All right.
If the wind blows a certain way, they're gonna be in there.
Well, that's the points we have to make. But unfortunately, what Dennis Riddell told me is that the one mine that's in northern Alabama, the school's closer than this one. They approved it. So, I mean, it's mind-boggling. Chris, you have the mic, right?
Well, yeah, I just wanted, in reading about all of the information in this file folder and the things that we discussed too, I think that there has been some concern about having an elementary school this close to potential silica dust and all of the other harmful
I'd worry more about the
too.
pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, that too, yeah.
All right, anybody else? Yes.
I don't think the county commissioners really care what happens. If they did, they'd be here tonight.
You got one.
You got one. But
there
here's
is another one who's been supporting
Tim Sutton
us.
has been very,
Okay,
very
but
supportive.
here's another thing. If they rubber stamped the approval without our approval, they could at least offer us the county attorney to step into the situation and help us. If they said they're gonna help us, we need more than words, Bob.
Yeah.
We don't have the
I
money.
met the county attorney, and I'm not sure I want him to.
Well, what I'm saying is, they have the ability, as we all know, to keep moving forward on this, hoping that we backpedal on it.
Yeah. Well, you know, go ahead, Bob. You could talk.
Well, just a point of clarification, the Board of Commissioners did not rubber stamp it because we never saw it. The way the ordinance is set up, it gives the authority to the planning director, which is wrong.
Sir, Mr. Commissioner.
So I'm not sure about offering the services of the county attorney or not.
Mr. Commissioner.
Yeah, we could, yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things we would like to do is you know, even Tim Sutton said he was here when this ordinance was passed, and it was a different time. He recognized, they already realized that this thing is not right. But unfortunately, we got kind of caught in the middle of that, and we got to just try to make the best out of it. I would think that if we could come to the county commissioners with a realistic reason that this permit was provided and didn't follow the proper procedures of that, they may consider that. So we would certainly continue to do that, you know, as we review those files this week. Anybody else?
Didn't the attorney say that permit was issued correctly?
Yes.
Because I listened to that emergency meeting.
Yes, he did.
So how is it is somebody come up with something new?
We have some questions. We have some, you know, we have some, basically, when he was also asked about, you know, did they know about the colonial gas thing, his response was, I'm sure our people looked into that, when in fact they didn't. So we have put together a list of questions that we're sending directly to him. We'll copy the commissioners that we would like some response to. There's a couple other things in there that we think may have some potential, but again, I'm not a lawyer. I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express. But we intend to hammer this. We're not done yet with the county.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Has anything ever been appealed before the planning board if they pass something without commissioners' approval? Has it ever
This ordinance,
passed?
the way that this ordinance is so one-sided that if they deny the permit to the company, they have the right to appeal. But there's nothing in the ordinance that allows us, the citizens of Alamance County, to appeal a decision.
Is there anything that says we can't?
Nope, there's nothing that says we can. And that's what we tried to do, but we didn't, you know, it kind of
If I
didn't
have
go
a
very.
problem with my tax rate, I've got it before the board and I'll appeal. And it seems like we could all get together and appeal. at
Well, I
the
think if we
county
can demonstrate that they did not do their due diligence and follow the ordinance, then I have every intent that some of us will go before the commissioners and say, hey, you know, we didn't do what we were supposed to do here, and appeal in that direction. I don't know what our legal recourse is in that regard. Yeah.
Are all the ordinances, do they allow the community to have an appeal process? And maybe this ordinance was written incorrectly?
There's an ordinance on subdivisions that permits public input, I believe, as a requirement, but the one on heavy industrial stuff does not.
Unbelievable.
That's what I said. It is an incredibly, you can just go Google the heavy industrial development ordinance for Alamance County, and you can read through it. Anybody else? All right, we kept you guys long enough. Thank you so much. We're going to need you, so stay tuned.